All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking your lunch time to listen to me talk. So what I'm going to be giving an overview on is the Stormwater Fee Credit Program that the Department of Public Works here in Baltimore City that we offer, and how that pertains specifically to congregations. So I want to thank you all again, not just for attending, but really thank you for the work that you're doing. I know I know a number of you who are attending, and I know that all of the green teams that Interfaith Partners have been nurturing and mentoring are doing a great job. And on behalf of the Department of Public Works, we thank you. I always like to start with this quote. Many of you probably already know it, but it does really take everyone, in many cases, small groups. Green teams tend to be small groups who are making change. So thank you for that. I think we have a small number of people at the moment on this workshop. Taylor, do you want to have go through and have people just say who you are and what congregation? I would be curious.
Yeah, if people want to put that in the chat or come off mute, whatever is easiest for you.
Let's do off mute because it's a small group, if that's okay. So I'm going to start with who I see at the bottom of mine is Raymond.
Ray Spitsnaz, Emmanuel Lutheran Church.
All right, and where in Baltimore City is it? That helps me.
It's on the corner of Loch Raven Boulevard and Belvedere Avenue, right across from Good Sam Hospital.
Got it. All right. Barbara Tunstall.
Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Barbara Tunstall. I'm representing the Coalition of Lutherans Advancing in Mission, Claim Baltimore.
Great. Regina.
I'm Regina Patterson. I'm from St. Philip's Evangelical Lutheran Church, and we are located at Caroline and Jefferson Street in Baltimore City.
Oh, great. Thanks. Brad.
Yeah, Brad Schlegel, St. Mark's Lutheran at 20th and St. Paul. And I think we've already applied for this in the past, but it'd be nice to confirm that we're still getting our credits.
All right. Well, we can take that offline about the confirmation, but thanks. Gary.
Homewood Friends meeting across from Johns Hopkins.
All right. Dick.
Good afternoon, Dick Williams, representing St. James Episcopal Church, located in Harlem Park, adjacent to Lafayette Square.
All right, great. And Martha.
You're muted.
You're muted, Martha. Oh, she's still muted. All right, we're going to come back to Martha. And then the last one I see just joined us, Peter. Can you introduce yourself and what congregation?
Yeah, I'm Peter Conrad, and I'm with the Govans Presbyterian Church on York Road. We've been doing a lot of work on our property with stormwater remediation, and just want to make sure that we're looking at all our financial opportunities here, and we may be doing some more work shortly.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all. I'm going to go ahead. That was helpful to kind of know not only who was here, but where you're located. For me, geographically, I like to get an understanding in the city of where you are. So thank you. So as Peter mentioned, I'm sure all of you are interested in, how do you connect the stewardship that you all are doing, the good work that you're doing at your congregations for the environment, and how can you potentially save money through the stormwater fee. So what I'm going to cover is just a brief overview of the Baltimore City stormwater fee, the types of reductions and credits that congregations can are eligible for, a little bit about the application approval process, and then because you all are the apostles for your particular congregations, how can you help your fellow congregants save money as well? And then questions. I will mention with questions, if you do have a question, put it in the chat. That's going to be monitored by, I think, Taylor and Bonnie. I will also have points in the presentation where I'll stop and see if people have questions. So I don't want to run through it and then just have a whole bunch of questions at the end. So I'm going to start with just an overview of the stormwater fee. So the stormwater fee was enacted in 2013. Initially, this was enacted for all jurisdictions who have an MS4 permit. So MS4 stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. This is a permit that we have administered by the Maryland Department of the Environment, but on behalf of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. This is what, as you might recall, a number of different political jurisdictions called the rain tax. And there are jurisdictions that no longer have a stormwater fee, but Baltimore does have a stormwater fee still intact. So you are paying it as a congregation, and if any of you, if you live in Baltimore City, then you are paying a stormwater fee as well. A stormwater fee is assessed to all properties in the city except for federal, state, and city-owned properties. So if you're a nonprofit, if you're a business, if you're a homeowner, you're assessed a stormwater fee. And the reason we have that is that it is a dedicated fund. It's used to finance all of our stormwater program. Those programs are to leverage capital dollars to do capital projects in the ground projects that relate to stormwater and stormwater both for quality as well as quantity. But also some of that money is used for the Chesapeake Bay Trust Outreach and Restoration Grant Program. Some of you might be familiar with it. Some of you, like Govins, have received funding from that grant program to install a project. So we use some of that money to help provide funds for nonprofits and for congregations included to do stormwater related projects. So as I mentioned, the stormwater fee, there are two categories. There's what we call single family properties. That's residential property. So if you live in Baltimore City, you are paying a stormwater fee as a residential property. But then also we have a category that's non-single family properties. So non-single family properties are businesses, institutions, nonprofits. You know, that does include congregations. That fee is based on impervious area. So as a homeowner, there are 3 tiers. I won't go into all the details of it, depending on the size of your property, of a fee that you pay. For non-single family properties, it's based on your impervious area. So what was done, and I wasn't part of all of the machinations of this, but it was calculated that the average residential parcel in the city is 1,050 square feet. So that's called an ERU. And for a non-single family property, you pay $6.70. That fee just went up with the water fee rate that went up about a month or 2 ago. So you're paying $6.70 a month for every 1,050 square feet of impervious surface that you have. And just, I know you all probably know this, but Impervious are those hard surfaces that don't allow rain to soak in. So an impervious surface would be the roofs of buildings, parking lots, paths, etc. If you want more information on the stormwater fee, here is a link at the bottom of this slide where you can find a lot of information. I'll be repeating this link or variations of this link throughout the presentation. This presentation will be made available for you. So you can take notes, but also these slides you'll be able to get after the workshop. So a part of the stormwater fee, we are legislated to provide credits and reductions. So this is an incentive program to support clean water activities. We recognize that we cannot do all of the work ourselves. And in fact, the majority of the property in Baltimore City is private property. It's not public property. So we really need actions by residents, congregations, businesses, institutions to help with improving water quality and primarily improving water quality, but also reducing flooding. So there are reductions in credits for both single family property and non-single family properties. There are exemptions. Those are only eligible for non-single family property. And I'll be covering all of the reductions, credits, and exemptions that apply, would apply for to a congregation. But just broadly, reductions are property-based, credits are activity or practice-based, and then exemptions are property-based and financial-based. And again, applications and guidance documents can be found on our website, the Public Works website. We have a section on stormwater and stormwater fee and reducing your stormwater fee. All of this information is available on our website. Just a couple of things before I get into the reductions, credits, and exemptions is in order to receive one, and Brad had mentioned about curious as to if they are still receiving a credit. Some of you may have as an individual, as a homeowner, or maybe for your congregation, submitted an application to the Department of Public Works. So this is what the application looks like. It's 2 pages. The back page is basically information about where the application can be sent and some additional material that might be needed depending on what you're applying for. And the first page is simply, the top is your applicant information and the bottom is what you are applying for. So our application is extremely simple, doesn't take you very long to fill out. What may take you some time would be the supporting materials that you would need. And I'll go into all of that when we talk about the specific reductions and credits. And then before I take a quick break for any questions, we have guidance documents for both non-single family property and single family property. Much of what I'm going to cover today is actually found in these guidance documents. So if you are not familiar with these, they are available on our website. Here is the link. And I would recommend, downloading a copy and going over this again. So before I get into all of the reductions, credits, and exemptions, I want to take a little break, see if there's any questions.
That application that you showed on the previous screen, I don't recall ever filling out such a thing. We are obviously a religious organization, and I see the top line says religious instruction fee reduction. How do we know if we've gotten that? just because we are a religious organization, or is that automatic, or do you have to fill this out to get it?
That's a good lead-in question to what I'm going to cover first.
Okay. I'll wait. That's all right. I'll wait.
Perfect. And anything else before I move on? All right. So that's a good question. What is a religious structure reduction fee, and how do I get it? So this is for your place of worship, or if you have a school as part of your congregation, you can get a reduction where you're paying $1 per ERU a month. So you need to be, that would be if you're not subject to state or city property tax, which I'm guessing all of you are as tax exempt nonprofits, organizations. And again, this is for a structure that is used exclusively as your place of worship or K-12 education. So if you want to receive it, well, you can do two things. One is at the end of this presentation will be my contact information. If you would like me to check to see if in fact you are receiving it, I can check and get back to you. If you are not receiving it, to me, this is like definite, do it tomorrow, because someone asked in leading up to the workshop, what's the biggest bang for your buck to save money? Well, to me, this is the biggest bang for your buck. We do not provide this automatically because we don't know what the footprint of your various religious structures are. We can't assume that all of your buildings, if you have multiple buildings, are your place of worship or K-12. So you need to tell us that. And what you just simply can do is you can take a Google map, you can highlight, you can outline, here are the buildings on our property that we want to apply for this religious structure reduction. And you send that in with your application. And then we will review that, and we will then adjust your stormwater fee. So everything that I'm going to go over today, you do need to apply. Nothing is just granted to you. But this is one that every congregation should be getting. And I know Bonnie has done a good job of promoting this, and about once a year she asked me to send her a list of all of the congregations that are receiving this stormwater, this reduction. And surprisingly, there aren't as many as you would think. So if you're on this workshop, and if you don't know if you're receiving this, then as a follow-up to the workshop, contact me. I will confirm it for you. This reduction does not need to be renewed, meaning that once you receive it, it is, it's in place until that property is no longer, religious property. So that's a nice thing about this, is that you do not need to renew it on a yearly or a 3-year basis. That is not the case for some of the others, and I'll go into them in a little bit more detail. Another reduction is impervious removal. So some of you or some congregations have done projects where they might remove a part of their parking lot or pathways or whatever it might be. That is a reduction because it's adjusting the amount of impervious on your property. So similar to the religious structure special fee, the reduction, If you have a project and you've removed impervious, then you would apply. You'd send in the application, you'd send in a plan or a map of the area that was removed. A photograph is always helpful, just to say like, hey, we removed it and we put down grass, and we put down a garden. And then we will review that. Our GIS team will then make an adjustment on your property information. So these are two reductions that a congregation can apply for. Any questions before I move on to credits?
Hey, Mark, this is Bonnie. Bonnie Thompson from GoVans asked this question. She said the slide says for K through 12, does it apply for congregations that have pre-K programs in their buildings as well?
In the guidance document, it says K through 12 only, but I do know GoVans does have pre-K because it's Baltimore, and I sent one of my sons there. So you should go ahead and submit anyways, and I think that should be that would be accepted. And if not, then we will reevaluate. But go ahead if you have a pre-K to apply. I will mention, I was going to mention this at the end, for our stormwater fee credit program, there is regulations. They were updated in 2017. You can find the regulations on our website under stormwater management. Bonnie with Interfaith Partners was involved as part of the Stormwater Advisory Committee at the time in making recommendations for adjusting our fee, our credits, and we are going to be embarking on making reviewing those and making revisions again. So I think that's a good point to bring up, and that would be one of the things that we can clarify in the next go around. But that was a long answer to simply go ahead and apply. And I don't think there should be a problem.
Yeah, we also have quite a few congregations that are Head Start locations, which is also pre-K, so that would apply to them as well.
Yep.
And then Brad also asked, do improvements to Treewells count?
No. I mean, if you mean like improvements to Treewells, like you're planting them, I don't really think they would count.
If they removed impervious surface to make their Treewells bigger?
If you own the Treewells, again, if you have Treewells on your property and you're removing impervious, yes, but remember they're gonna, they're basing that ERU on the 1,050. They will round up, but if you're removing 40 square feet, it's not really going to make, it's not going to make a difference. It's not enough to and adjust that number. If any of you want to talk in more detail about any of this, again, feel free as a follow-up to give me a call. But if you're talking Treewells that are along the street, if it's not your property, then you're not, that's not impervious that you're being charged.
Mark, I think you offered previously to give your contact information. I would appreciate you following up on that, because I'd like to contact you about are we receiving this credit or not?
Sure, and my contact information is on the last slide.
Okay.
And Bonnie or Taylor or Darren, they have my contact information memorized. It's in their heart. So if you want to put that in the chat as well, feel free.
And then Raymond, I don't know if you saw, I put in the chat because like Mark said, he sends me a list annually of all the congregations that have applied. And there's 2 Emmanuel churches on the list, One's Emmanuel Church at 815 Cathedral Street, and the other one is Emmanuel United Baptist Church on Reisterstown Road. So it
That's
doesn't,
not us.
neither one of those are you. Now, there's
No.
some other ones that are on here that I can't necessarily tell who they are, but those are the only Emmanuels that are on the list. So it looks to me like you have not applied.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
As a suggestion, I don't know if this is just our fault or not, but this reduction fee was unknown to me, and we've been paying that stormwater assessment for, well, since it was enacted. And really, it's the dividing line between are we in the black or in the red for the year? So it's not an insignificant thing. I don't understand how it was applied to religious organizations in the first place, but since it is, I think it would be helpful if the City Department of Water, where these bills come from, would put something in their notices every month that this is available. Because now we've been paying it for many years, not knowing about it. And I'm sure they're not going to restore any back payments we made that are over what we are entitled to have.
Okay, well, I will pass that information on. We'll see what we can do about, promoting that better. I do know that, you have two other partners here, Blue Water Baltimore and Interfaith Partners, and they have an opportunity as well to help promote that as well. So we'll see what we can do, but, follow up and I can help you with that.
Thank you.
And that's
Hey,
why we're
Mark.
here. And that's why we're here today. So, right? I know we can't go backwards, but let's go
Wish
forward.
you'd have been here 6 years ago or whenever it was.
Hey, Mark. So
Yeah.
this is Peter Conrad. So I have a question about two different, I guess you could call them BMPs, green roofs, whether
Hey,
they could-
Peter,
yeah.
can I move into that section where we talk about those kind of BMPs?
That would be great.
All right, and hold that question and then we'll get to that. But for reductions, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Is that okay?
Please.
All right, we're getting closer to Peter's question. So there are two types of credits, and I'm using reduction as different than a credit. You're still saving money, but the mechanism is a little bit different. So there are non-treatment credits, and then there are treatment credits. So the three non-treatment credits that could be, I think, applicable or most likely applicable for a congregation is a participation credit. So a participation credit is not going to save you, the congregation, much money, but it's there. So if your congregation does any type of like community cleanup, or you participate in you organize a stream cleanup, you will receive a certificate to share with volunteers that is worth $10. So we provide credit for people who are doing cleanups because we recognize that if we're going to have better water quality, that things like trash and debris in the water contribute to the pollution. So we also recognize from an equity standpoint that a number of the treatment practices that are available for people, there are neighborhoods and people, residents and congregations that just don't have room for those. So we provide this participation credit. If you participate, if you organize a cleanup, what you do is you register that on 311 as a volunteer cleanup. You will then, whoever registers that, the organizer will receive a certificate. They then can make copies of that certificate, share it with the congregation, and share it with volunteers. So we'll get back to the participation credit when we get to the single family property credits. But for a congregation, these certificates can be what we call gifted or donated. So if your congregation does a cleanup, what you would then do is you would take 3 certificates. People would give you their certificate. You take 3 certificates. You would send that in with your application and you would save $30 a year. $10 credit per certificate times 3, you would save $30. That's not a lot of money, but it's a little something. So that is, it tends to be a little bit more impactful for individuals, but you know, don't leave that one on the table. If you're already doing cleanups, then just simply call 311 and register a volunteer cleanup. What that also does is that coordinates with our solid waste division. So if you are doing a cleanup and you'd like to have that trash and debris picked up by DPW, this allows for it. This, you know, we now know where, and part of your registration, when you register and call in, you tell us where you'd like the trash picked up and we will come and pick it up. So it provides that benefit as well. The other 2 non-treatment credits are what are called green space and small development. So if your congregation might own a separate parcel, for one reason or another, you own a parcel that is not a part of where your congregation is, and you're paying a stormwater fee on that parcel. So there's a green space credit so that if you have less than 50 square feet of impervious on that parcel, you get a 45% credit on that fee. And then if it's a little bit larger parcel and there's 50 to 820 square feet, you receive a 33% credit. That tends to be, those tend to be parcels that might be a vacant lot or a lot that had, you know, previously had like a garage on it or something like that. That may not be applicable to anyone on this workshop, but I did want to note that if you have, if you own any parcels that are not a part of your congregation proper, or are paying a parcel that you have a separate stormwater or a separate water bill for, these 2 credits might be applicable.
Why do you get more credit for a smaller space?
Because it has less impervious. So the green space, it has nothing to do with the parcel size. It has to do with the amount of impervious. I will note that for the participation credit, those are good for only 1 year. So that $30 expires after a year. You would need to then do, you know, an additional cleanup. The green space or small development credit, those are good for 3 years. And what at the end of the 3 years, you would need to just simply send an application in again and say you would like to renew that credit. The reason we have these with the limited time period, the 1 year or 3 years, for the 3 years, properties can change hands. So we want to make sure that it still is, it still meets the criteria of this credit. I will also note that for the green space and small development, we do inspect that and we let housing know. And if it's a property that is not being maintained, we might rescind that credit. But these are 3 non-treatment that you might be able to take advantage of. All right, any questions with these?
Mark, this is Dick. I have a question about the green space that relates to St. James Episcopal having an affiliate corporation called, or affiliate organization called St. James Development Corporation. It's a 501c3. They own some vacant lots behind St. James, really fronting North Fremont. Would they be possibly eligible for this credit, those lots that are vacant?
They would. If
Okay.
the non-single family property that is not only just for congregations, it's for institutions, it's for nonprofits, it's for businesses, it's for private businesses.
Yeah.
So they could be eligible for that as well.
Okay, thank you. We're looking at,
All right.
Mark, we have one more question. It says, how do we go about cleaning up adjacent property that's vacant, not owned by the congregation? And do any benefits accrue as a result of this kind of effort?
No benefits accrue from us. I'm sure benefits accrue in the spiritual sense, but cleaning up an adjacent lot, we don't provide any benefits or reductions for that. If you've got questions about how you would go about doing that, I could send you information on nuisance abatement, and you could follow up on that.
You also had a question about cemeteries.
Uh-huh.
I'm assuming, Peter, is your question, do they qualify for the green space credit?
They may not. I think it would depend on if you're referring to Govan Cemetery. I don't know how your parcel is allocated. If it's part of the larger parcel that the church and preschool and other buildings are on, then it would not. It would have to be a separate parcel with a separate water bill. I do have something related to cemeteries coming up under exemptions. So just before I move on, the green space small development, don't think of it as like a green space as part of your congregation property. But if your congregation owns separate parcels, then that have their own water bill on, and in many cases, these parcels have what's called a stormwater only fee. This is where that might be applicable. So I don't mean to confuse people with this. Again, if you want to follow up with me, feel free. This tends to be more of the example that Dick brought up, where there might be a nonprofit who owns a few lots versus maybe a congregation. But I didn't want to overlook it if it might benefit people. All right, so treatment practices. So treatment practices are things like rain gardens, bioswales, bioretention, green roof, and then others as per the Maryland Stormwater Guidance Manual. So these practices typically involve engineers. So hiring an engineer, having someone who has engineering background are going to be able to be most helpful for you in terms of not only designing and implementing these projects, but also can provide some assistance in your as part of your application. So these are practices that can be eligible for the Chesapeake Bay Trust Outreach and Restoration Grant Program, as well as other grant programs. I know that there are some of you on this workshop who have received Outreach and Restoration Grant Program funding, and also maybe funding from other Chesapeake Bay Trust programs like their G3 program, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, and others. But these are those, what are sometimes called green infrastructure that I think a lot of us are more familiar with, is, rain garden and any, engineered type of rain garden. I will note, and I put this in red, and I should have mentioned this with the religious structure reduction, is if you are receiving that reduction, then a treatment practice that is treating runoff from that area is not eligible for treatment credits. For example, if you were receiving a reduction for your place of worship, and you have a rain garden or a bioretention facility that is treating runoff from that place of worship, then you would not be eligible for getting treatment credits for that facility. Now, the question came up earlier, you didn't understand why religious structures or congregations were even paying a fee. A lot of people have asked that. And in negotiating and providing that reduction for the place of worship and or educational building, the compromise was that you would not be eligible for treatment credits from one of those structures. So I do want to point that out. There are, I'll show after this slide, a few examples of some congregation projects that were funded through Chesapeake Bay Trust, and a couple of them were not eligible because of that requirement. If it is eligible, we provide up to a 45% of the impervious area treated. So I did a little example. If you were treating 4,200 square feet, which would be equivalent to 4 ERUs, that would be $26.80 a month that you're paying for those 4 ERUs. So if you're then getting a credit of 45%, that would be $12.06 a month, which would equate to $144.72 savings a year. And that would be for a facility treating a little over 4,000 square feet of impervious surface that is not already receiving a religious structure reduction. Again, a question came up of what facilities, what practice would get the biggest bang for the buck. Those that treat the most impervious, because the more impervious that you treat, then the more money that you're saving. Peter, did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I think this covered most of it, but we're actually looking at installing a cistern, which would serve for a farm on our property, and that would collect rainwater from a fair number of the structures on the site. So I'm just curious if that would be eligible. I mean, it's not a driving component of that decision, but it would certainly provide a water quality component, because it would be capturing that water, and then we would be reserving it for the farm use.
Right. So if the water is capturing if the water's from structures that are receiving the religious structure reduction, then that would not qualify for the treatment credit. However, that's the kind of project that, and this is a whole different workshop, and this is a workshop that Chesapeake Bay Trust holds every year with the Outreach and Restoration Grant Program. This is the kind of project that could be that would be eligible for possible funding from Chesapeake Bay Trust or other funders.
And I'll just jump in here and say that's one of the reasons why we look at treating parking lot runoff, because the parking lot runoff, unless you actually put in a practice, does not qualify for the fee reduction. So that's
Right.
kind of why we kind of focus in on those types of things, because once you've got the fee reduction, even though it's something that we think you should do anyway, because it's a caring for God's creation, you're not going to get that much credit for doing that, because if you've applied for your fee reduction, you won't be reducing the fee much if you treat that runoff.
Right. And that's one of the reasons we provide funding to the Outreach and Restoration Grant Program, because we would like these kind of projects to be installed, and we want to be able to provide some funding towards that. And that's a good point with the parking lot. If you recall back that very first slide, the cover slide, it was a sign for Church of the Redeemer. So Church of the Redeemer, they did a project that is treating almost an acre of a parking lot that they have. Here on the upper left, this is People's Community Lutheran, which is on Loch Raven, just north of Northern Parkway. So they installed some bioretention and rain gardens that treats the water on their parking lot. So that qualifies for the treatment credit. On the right, the upper right, that is Mount Lebanon Baptist Church. They have a limited space, and they were very creative, and they worked with Blue Water Baltimore to install a cistern and a stormwater planter. So instead of doing a rain garden in the ground, they did it as above ground planter. These are great projects. That's a great project. It got funded by Chesapeake Bay Trust, Outreach and Restoration, but because it's treating water from the church, the sanctuary that's receiving stormwater reduction, it did not qualify for a treatment credit. The same with the bottom right. This is, well, actually the bottom right, this is St. John's in Brooklyn. They have a couple of rain barrel cisterns that did not qualify because they were treating water from their place of worship. But this is a rain garden that was not treating water from any structure that they were getting a religious structure reduction. I can't say whether they're getting any credit for this. I'd have to look to see if they had applied. But all three of these examples are types of projects that one could do regardless of getting a credit. All of these examples were funded through Chesapeake Bay Trust and Department of Public Works funding. So what do you need? I'm kind of running off script now. What do you need in order to apply for a treatment credit? Again, I mentioned that to do these types of projects, and these tend to be larger rain garden bioretention projects, meaning that they're treating, especially as Bonnie mentioned, like a parking lot, they're treating a lot more area, and they require engineering drawings for the design and then the construction of the facility. So an engineer, most often than not, is going to be engaged in preparing the plans and designs for these types of projects. And you'll need in your application, you'll need to include your plans so that those can be reviewed by the department. You'll also need a maintenance plan and schedule. Those are typically included in these types of plans, but you need a maintenance plan. We need to see a maintenance plan because rain garden or bioretention only works if it's working. And if it's not maintained, then it's not going to function. And that's one of the reasons they're often called green infrastructure, is that they are like infrastructure. They are something that needs to be maintained in order to continue working properly. Including photos is always helpful. And I'll talk a little bit in a few slides about just the whole review process. But these are, in addition to your application, this is what you'll want to include with your application. After it's been reviewed, you will then, you should then receive an agreement for an inspection and maintenance agreement. And why that is provided is that we are required by the state to inspect these types of facilities on a every 3-year basis. So what that allows, that agreement, is it effectively allows us, the Department of Public Works, to come out and inspect this this practice. Just a couple of notes leading up to your application. If you're doing a project of this nature, you're going to require a permit. Effectively, any project that is done in the city is going to require a permit. Now, a permit is through the housing department. These types of projects, rain gardens, bioretention, that would be a grading permit. So they do require a permit in order to be constructed. Let's say you should pull a permit for that. Depending on the size of the facility, if it's over a 5,000 square foot limit of disturbance, and I'm not going to go into this, this again can be a separate, like if you're looking for grant funding, wanting to understand if you're going to fall under a certain plans review, we can do that separately. I'm always available. But if it does have a limit of disturbance of greater than 5,000 square feet, it will require stormwater management and erosion sediment control plans review by the Department of Public Works. That's just helpful to know as you're looking for potential grant funding for doing, like, covering engineering and design, which the Watershed Assistance Grant Program through Chesapeake Bay Trust does provide funding for that, as well as implementation and construction funding. It's helpful to know what those costs might be from your engineer and any review fees that might be required. We do have, for those projects that are over 5,000 square feet limit of disturbance, so the Redeemer project and the People's Community Lutheran definitely were over that square footage. We do require a $500 review fee. That is a reduction to our typical review fee. So a development project, their review fee would be in the several $1,000s. So, you know, we have provided a reduction for that. But that could be a whole nother workshop or separate conversation if you are wanting to talk details about a particular project. And
Hey,
then
Mark, I just want to flag, we have 3 minutes for the hour, so. I don't know if we
okay.
can- Yep.
So this is just another example of a type of plan, as-built. Sometimes someone will say you need an as-built plan or we want an as-built plan. Your engineer can explain that. So non-single family property exemptions. So there are two. Cemeteries came up. Roads, private roads that are maintained on cemeteries, on cemetery property, they are exempt from stormwater fee. So if you have a cemetery, and I'm pretty sure Govins has applied some years past, hopefully that all got worked out. But if you've got a cemetery, if you've got a private road on that cemetery that you're maintaining, you would just send that in with your application, send a map showing here's what the roads are. We will review it. We will adjust that, you know, in the in your impervious total. Another, and no one has applied for this, but we do provide a hardship exemption. So if your total annual stormwater remediation fee exceeds 0.75%, 3/4% of your annual revenue, and you don't have an annual revenue that if it's under $1 million, you could be eligible for and apply for this hardship exemption. I will say that you just don't you just aren't exempt because you are required to do three things. One, you do need to install at least one best management practice. Two, you need to provide some outreach and education. And three, you need to do what we call green care and good housekeeping. The details of this hardship exemption is on the website. If you think you might be eligible for this, please have a look at it. Please contact me. I will thank again Bonnie. They are involved in a similar program in Prince George's County, and we patterned that program and their guidance on developing an alternative compliance plan. This was a state legislated exemption, and so we were able to determine what that exemption line was, as well as what that alternative compliance plan would be. Again, no one has applied, doesn't mean that no one's been eligible for it. So please, if you think you are, have a look at that, we can chat. And then real quick, because I know there's some of you who may have applied, who've had difficulties, what happens when you do submit an application? You submit an application, it goes to our customer support and service division. They review the application, and then depending on what you are applying for, it goes in different flow paths. So for a reduction, that tends to be relatively easy. CSSD may be the one reviewing that, or it might be our GIS department because they have to make an adjustment on your total impervious. A non-treatment credit, that again could be CSSD. For the participation credit, sometimes I'm asked to review that, and that's just simply like, do you have you included a certificate? Do you have all the paperwork? And then for that green space development, an inspector might go out just to check to verify that yes, there is like not a house on this property. The treatment credit, that's more involved. That involves our plans review section. It also involves our inspection section. And then finally, exemption, that could be simply our GIS department related to the roads and cemeteries, or it would be me working with the congregation or any nonprofit on that hardship exemption. So a decision we have in our guidance document, a decision will be made within 30 days. And if it's longer, that credit will be applied retroactively starting at the end of that 30-day period. The reality is they all take over 30 days. This has been one of the areas that we've been working on to try to improve the efficiency and the speed in reviewing all applications. But I will tell you, they rarely meet that 30 days. So if you have questions about where you are in the process, you can do three things. One, you can email publicworks@baltimorecity.gov. You can call 410-396-5398. And that is the telephone number for customer support and service division. Or as I hope someone put in the chat and is on the last slide, you can contact me. I can check in the system as to where this stands. So 30 days is when we should have a decision, but that never happens in 30 days. So I would say be patient, stay on us, and it will be retroactive to the end of that 30-day period. So I'm going to go real quick, Bonnie and others. So just quickly, there are single-family property credits. Again, on our website, you can get all this information. Residents can organize community cleanups. They can get a participation event credit. They can install small and large rain gardens and get a credit. They can plant trees on their property and get credit. They can install a rain barrel and get a credit. So each of these have a different credit to it. The rain barrel is a one-time credit. All that information is on this website that I have here. You will, and then also this is something to share with your congregations. We have a Water for All program. So this is a water bill discount program, and that could benefit, you know, in particular elderly who might be congregants or other congregation members or just community members in general. So this is based on income. If their income is less than 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, and that, for example, for a 4-member household, that's $55,500. If they qualify, there is an application that they need to fill out, and then based on that income, they will receive a certain discount on their water bill. This isn't just stormwater fee related. This is on their entire water bill. So I want to highlight that because it's a program that we want, you know, you all can help get that information to people as well. So as I promised, here is my information, my email address, also my work cell. We've mainly gone back to the office, but the last 2 years, the only people that called me on my cell phone number. So feel free to call my cell phone number. Respect my hours. So don't call me at like 10 at night. But you know, that's the easiest way to reach me, 410-215-1961. You will get me directly and you won't have to go through a party line, which is effectively our office number. Do we even have party lines anymore? I don't know. I'm giving away my age by using that term. So
Well, thanks, Mark. We did have a couple of questions that came up in the chat that for those of you who only had an hour lunch break, feel free to leave, and we are still recording. So if you want to catch the end answers to some of these questions, you'll get a copy of the recording and you can access the answers to the specific questions. But if you have the flexibility, can hang on, that's fine too. So Regina asked, going back to the cleanup, if they pursue a cleanup project, does DPW provide any support such as bags, brooms, racks, etc.?
we do not.
Is there still like is there another department within the city that does? Wasn't there the clean core? What is
Be More Beautiful,
Yep.
which is, I think, what you were referring to initially was called Clean Core. If you are a member of Be More Beautiful, or if you want to just reach out to them, they may be able to assist you with that. I would say just Google Be More Beautiful. They're out of the Environmental Control Board. They may be able to assist you with that, but I can't say for certain. I will say that if you're looking for wanting to rent at a really cheap price, tools like grab pickers, gloves, shovels, etc. The Baltimore Community Tool Bank, if you're not familiar with them, provide these kind of materials at 3 cents on the dollar, meaning that if trash picker is, you know, $6, if you had to buy it, you could rent it for, what is that, like 18 cents. So you have to pick up these tools from them, but that is a very inexpensive way to get various types of tools and other equipment at a very reasonable price. It's free to be a member of the tool bank. I would just, again, if you're not familiar with them, check them out, and they're a good resource.
Great minds think alike. Darren and Patrick put that in the chat box too, and then Taylor followed that up with a link to their website. We did have one other question, and I'm going to add to it. So Regina had asked, so if they apply, how is notification, how do they receive notification as to whether or not they were approved or disapproved? How do they find out that they got their reduction?
You should receive notification that they got your application. And they were moving to doing that electronically, but they also would send out a letter. So you would be notified either by email or a letter that you should be notified that they received your application. And then you would be notified again via email and or letter that you were approved or not approved.
Great. I think I covered all of those questions. I would just say, so I always tell folks to watch your bill. And so once you know that it's been received, or you've been notified that it's received, just have whoever's paying your water bill to check and compare one month to the other. And if a couple of months goes by and that fee doesn't drop, that would be your, the flag to say, oh, I need to contact somebody because they received our application, but our fee has not been reduced after a few billing cycles.
Yeah, definitely do that. Also, pay attention to that number. And I say that because, like, for the example that I had with what you might be saving $150 a year, because you're billed on a monthly basis, that reduction is per month. So sometimes that number isn't very large, and people miss out on it because they're not really noticing a big change. So, just pay attention to that, as Bonnie said, and if you're not seeing that happen, you've got the contact information about who to contact. Also, in the guidance documents, there is a section on an appeal. So if you, for some reason, were denied, you can appeal that. And in having reviewed some of these, sometimes the reason it was denied might have just been an oversight, and it's just a matter of explaining it better to whoever might have been part of the review process. As was indicated on that slide, there are potentially multiple entities that touch an application review as part of the process. And we all know that sometimes when we're reviewing one thing, we're not really paying attention to the whole. So we may not understand the context or the bigger picture. So that happens, but if you are denied, your application is denied, there is a process for appealing that.
Great. Well, I think we answered all the questions that were in the chat. Mark, we really thank you for spending this time with us to explain this to our congregations. Everyone, he mentioned, I do have access to the list that he sent me for the congregations that have applied. It was valid as of April of this year. So Usually I get a new list from him like in the winter. So if you're wondering if your congregation's on the list, I can let you know that. And then I'm happy. Martha, it was great to see you. Stony Run, we've been trying to connect with you guys for years. So I hope this is the beginning of a bigger conversation with us, because I know you've got beautiful grounds over there at Stony Run. And it's just great to see you guys here, and let us know if we can help you in any way to review whether or not you've gotten your discounts where you think you should have gotten those. So
And
great, thank you.
And I want to thank Blue Water Baltimore, and I want to thank Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake for organizing this. We're happy to help get the word out, help you all in supporting the work that you're doing. So hopefully this was of benefit, and if anything, maybe brought up some things that you're like, oh, I'm gonna call Mark on his cell phone as soon as we're finished and talk with him. So
Yeah,
I think my
yeah.
phone,
Yeah,
I
turn
should
your
have
phone
turned it
on.
off.
Turn your phone on, Mark. And
no one called me yet.
And just so you know, we did get quite a few messages in the chat thanking us for today and saying this is a really helpful workshop. So we really do appreciate you doing this with us.
That's right. And then
Thank you
I'll
so
see
much.
who called, and I'll be like, who, new phone, who's this? All right. But
All
no,
right, everybody.
feel free to
Thanks.
reach out.
Have a beautiful day.
All right. You
Take
all
care.
too.
Bye.